Afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to today's Family Partnership Council meeting. My name is Marcia Van Hook, and I am the Full Service Community Schools Manager here at the Kentucky Department of Education. And I'm looking forward to working with each of you as I serve as your chair of this council. And I also want to thank all of the members who sent in suggestions for topics that we can learn about together today. And so that was very, very helpful as we prepared for this meeting. So before we get started, I'd like just to take a moment to review the purpose of the Family Partnership Council. So I'm going to read it just to make sure we all have it together. The council serves as an advisory role to the Kentucky Department of Education and provides input regarding topics of interest to families, such as ways that families and communities can assist schools in ensuring that the achievement level of all students is increased. And so that is our purpose. And I want to take a moment also to welcome our new members to the council. So our new members for this period is Laura Beard, and I see Laura, welcome. Dr. Brittany Faulkner. Hello, Jamie Helton. Leah Markham. Chris Medley, Alicia Miller, Amy Nickerson, Tara Trucker, and Erin Weaver. Hope I have everyone's names correct there. And I also want to welcome back all of our returning members. Advisory Council members, just please ensure that your video is streaming and that you are visible throughout the duration of the meeting. Your microphone should be muted when you are not speaking. However, all discussions must be available to the public. So when it is your turn or you do want to speak up, please just make sure that your mic is unmuted. And next, I'll turn to Leslie Spears for the roll call. Leslie?
Hello, everyone. I'm going to do the roll call and you all let me know if you're here or not. I've got Laura Beard.
Here.
Brittany Faulkner.
Here.
Elizabeth Ashley Bruce.
Here.
Tara Trucker.
Here, and it's TrueCore.
TrueCore, thank you. I'm so sorry.
TrueCore, yep.
Okay, great. Jamie Helton. Leah Markham.
Here.
Amy Nickerson.
Here.
Alicia Miller. Amity Kukla.
Here.
Melissa Goins.
I'm here on behalf of Melissa.
Thank you. Tom Haggard. Rhonda Logston.
Here.
Erin
Hope y'all are
Weaver.
well.
Here.
And Chris Medley. Okay, thank you. Marcia, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you, Leslie. We're going to move into approval for the September of 2023 minutes of this committee. I just want to remind each of you that those minutes were sent out to you in a previous email. You will have access to them. I think they're posted in the chat box already. I don't have the chat box up, but I think Leslie's done that. So I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to look over those before I call for a motion to approve. All right. I'm going to call for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? Say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Typically, at this point in our meeting, we would have Interim Commissioner Kinney would join us. And today, however, she is engaged in the interviews for Kentucky's new Commissioner of Education. So if by chance she were to pop in later in this meeting, we'll pause and see if she'd like to make any remarks. However, we're not expecting her, but I just wanted to say this is usually the point where the commissioner, in this case, interim Commissioner Kenny, would speak to us as a group. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and move us into your first topic that came to us, and that was for a legislative update. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Brian Perry. He is the Director of Government Relations. And Brian, I know you've already indicated you will need to leave our meeting as soon as you're done. So we just want to thank you so much for all of your time today. So Brian, go ahead and I'll drive the slides.
And I've turned my camera on, but it's not popping up. So I don't know if you all can see me or if there's a, oh, it says a shutter. Sorry, I got a new computer the other day. There we go. All right. Okay, next slide, please. Jump right in. So we are near the end of the 2024 session. And so I've been using these slides since the beginning. So some of the timelines are coming near the end here. Right now we're on a committee day, so it's not an actual legislative day. So there's 60 legislative days in these budget years. Right now they're scheduled to come back on Thursday and Friday. Then they'll be in most of next week, and we'll adjourn on next Thursday for the beginning of the veto period. So the veto period will last until April 12th. During that time, the governor can take action on bills that have reached him to date. He can let them become law without us. He can sign them into law, let them become law without his signature, or veto them. When they come back on the 12th and 15th for the final 2 days of the session, they can override any vetoes with a simple majority vote in each chamber. So the governor can only veto bills in their entirety except for the budget bill. He does have line item veto power in the budget. Same rules apply, though. They can overturn them with simple majority vote. So the budget that goes to him for action before the veto period will be the budget that we have for the next 2 years. Anything that gets vetoed will just get overridden. You can follow. Oh, go back just a quick second. Yeah, there you go. You can watch along if you want to watch the last bit of the session. If you haven't been following along, almost everything is streamed on either KET's website or occasionally things get bumped over to the LRC YouTube channel. And if you just Google LRC YouTube, Kentucky LRC YouTube, it'll pop up. But occasionally during the end of the session, when there's lots of stuff, lots of committees happening at the same time, some things get bumped over there. Otherwise, KET's the way to go. House Bill 6 is the budget bill, if you're not aware. So if you're trying to follow along in the budget, House Bill 6 is the one, and we will jump right in from there. So we had about 1,200 bills that were filed this session between the two chambers. So a lot of legislation out there to look at. We flagged about 250 bills as ones that we were going to watch. So yeah, a lot of education legislation being discussed right now. I have no idea what's going to be most of interest to you all. So since we're late in the session, I've kind of organized this by how far the bills have moved, because we're really close to bills being dead just because they're going to run out of time. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so just as a refresher, in case you haven't listened to your Schoolhouse Rock lately, a bill starts in one chamber, it gets assigned to a committee. The committee refers it to the full chamber. It can then get a floor vote. If it gets out of the chamber, it goes over to the next chamber and starts all over again. And so it's a pretty long and winding path. Bills can get amended pretty much anywhere along the way. Most typically that happens in committee with committee substitutes, which we've seen a lot of this year. I think probably more than I've ever seen in past sessions. Almost every bill that we'll talk about here today has at least one committee sub, if not multiples. And so, yeah, long winding road. But about Wednesday of next week, we will hit kind of the deadline for bills that have not at least cleared the first chamber to really be running out of time. It takes about 5 legislative days for a bill to go from start to finish to the governor's desk, right? So once we get into those final few days of the session before the veto period, bills that haven't made it far enough in the process are effectively dead. There are some ways around this, right? You can roll bills together. You can fold one bill into another one, which is what we'll talk about here in a second. Anyway, so in terms of bills that are likely to make it across the finish line this session, House Bill 2 is the bill you've likely heard some talk about already, because it is going to put an initiative on the ballot in the fall that will ask voters essentially if they want to change the way we fund education in Kentucky. So right now, the Kentucky Constitution is pretty strict in that it doesn't allow any public dollars to flow to outside of the common school system. And so that means that charter schools, voucher programs have kind of hit a roadblock in the judiciary, even though the legislature has tried to pass some bills over the past few years. So this is kind of a one final attempt to get those dollars to flow into those types of entities. So House Bill 2 looks like it's going to be the vehicle. There was House Bill 208 was the first one of the session, and there's a Senate bill as well. But it looks like House Bill 2 will be the one that gets put on the ballot. So if it is ratified, so if the majority of voters in the fall say that they agree with the constitutional amendment, then the legislature would have to come back and figure out what that means. House Bill 2 really is only asking that specific question. It doesn't say there's going to be really anything in particular, which if you've tried to listen to all of the hours of debate on this, it doesn't have any policy decision within House Bill 2. It is literally just putting the question on the ballot. So if it's ratified in the fall, then we'll likely see more conversations in coming sessions about what they want to do with that. So I see a hand up. So how about it?
I hope it's okay to, as you're talking
sure.
about it, to ask it.
I do a lot of these, so questions are good.
This is where I have humongous concerns, this House Bill 2, and particularly in relation to if this goes through and is voted for, what this is going to look like, and particularly for students with disabilities, as well as other minority groups, because I don't think everybody has a true picture of how they are treated and have the opportunity right now in private schools. So if I could understand a little bit better with the Senate Bill 2, it goes on the ballot, they vote for it, how soon would it have to go into effect to where people would be offered these vouchers? Would it be the next school year? I guess
those types of
policies.
So let me jump in. House Bill 2 doesn't answer any of those questions, right? So House Bill 2 literally only puts the initiative on the ballot. That's the sole function of House Bill 2, is to put the question on the ballot in the fall. If it's ratified, then the legislature would have to come back and start to answer some of these policy questions like you have, like, would they fund charter schools? What would those look like? Would they do some sort of voucher program? None of those questions are addressed within House Bill 2, though. It's just putting essentially the question on the ballot. So, but yeah, then that's been the back and forth literally for hours of debate is, well, what's this actually going to mean? So yeah, we'll know more after November, I suspect. So, so House Bill 446, I'm just kind of moving along here. House Bill 446 is one that addresses an issue that we've heard quite a bit of talk about over the interim period last year and through the session. That's conduct on school buses. So there's been a lot of talk about student transportation in general. This was the first one of what I think will be of several bills that reach the governor eventually. So anyway, that one's out there. Senate Bill 8, I'll just mention because both the process and content may be of interest. So heading into the session, we heard a lot of talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives at both secondary and post-secondary institutions. So we saw Senate Bill 93 get introduced in the Senate pretty early on, and that's a very similar bill to Senate Bill 8 for secondary schools. That bill may still move, we're not really sure. There's still plenty of time for it too. But so Senate Bill 8 focused on post-secondary institutions only. It got over to the House quite a while ago, but the House finally took action last week on it. But they amended it in committee and basically replaced all of the language with House Bill 9, which is another DEIB bill that's probably more restrictive than Senate Bill 8 was. And I just mentioned this because it's part of the interesting process. So what happens now is passed out of both chambers, but because the House changed it so significantly, it has to go back to the Senate for them to either agree or disagree essentially with the House changes. If they don't agree, then they go into something called conference committee where they try to work out the differences. So that bill, even though it's passed both chambers, isn't headed to the governor just yet. There'll still be some work to do between the chambers to decide if they can agree on what to essentially send to the governor for action. So those are the only 3 bills that are education related that have passed both chambers and are on their very close to the end of the road. And so I also wanted, sorry, I'm trying to move my slides myself. Next slide. All right, so now we'll talk a little bit about the Senate bills that have cleared their chamber and over in the House awaiting action. Just as a reminder, we have 38 senators, 100 representatives, so we always have a lot more House bills than we have Senate bills. So pretty small list in the Senate right now. So Senate Bill 2 was filed by Senator Max Wise. You may have heard a lot of talk about this one related to guardians. They were trying to come up, so there's been a real shortage of SROs for schools to hire. That's been a real problem for schools. And so Senate Bill 2 introduced this idea of guardians, which are retired law enforcement, military folks. So folks kind of coming from that world. It also includes some mental health initiatives that the department's very supportive of. But the guardians have become quite a hot topic. I don't think that law enforcement is fully on board just yet. A lot of questions about the chain of command, things that not in my wheelhouse, but it's still being debated. So we'll probably see the House take this up. And the lower the bill number, generally speaking, the higher the priority is for that chamber for that particular session. So this is a real high priority bill for the Senate. It'd be pretty unlikely that the House doesn't at least take it up for consideration. Senate Bill 4 is up here in just a little bit in House Education. It's dealing with KTR sick days. So how many sick days participants in the teachers' retirement system can accumulate over time. Senate Bill 8 is one that the Kentucky Board of Education is obviously very interested in. It would change the way that the board is formed. So right now we have a fully appointed board and then with confirmation from the state Senate. So the governor appoints members to the board, the Senate then confirms them. Senate Bill 8 would change that entirely. It would make it a fully elected board. So there would be 2 members elected from each state Supreme Court district sort of on a rotating basis. But yeah, you have a fully elected board. That's not totally without precedent. There are a handful of states that do have fully elected boards. And then there's another handful of states that have a hybrid model where you have some elected, some appointed members. In any case, Senate Bill 8's now in the House. If the House takes it up, we'll see what happens. Senate Bill 11 is a juvenile justice related bill. This bill is trying to close the amount of time between a student getting involved in the criminal justice system and the school getting notification. Right now, there can be a pretty significant delay. And obviously that's, causing some worry for folks at the school district level. If you've got a student that's involved in the justice system for, a serious allegation, the school may have good reason to want to know about that. And so that's trying to close that gap. Anyway, we'll see where that one goes. Senate Bill 18 addresses school buses. It would kind of change the way the department can set guidelines for school buses. It's way down in the weeds. Senate Bill 167 is one that I'm not sure that I would have thought we would be talking about going into the session, but it would sort of mandate cursive writing in elementary schools. A lot of this, I think, is already in place. But in any case, I think 167 is also on the agenda for this afternoon. So I'll get to go hear more about cursive writing here in just a little bit. Senate Bill 265 is one of several bills dealing with teacher certification. This has been a running theme the last few years. We've had lots of changes to teacher certification, particularly the alternative pathways into the profession. And so this is just sort of a continuation of that. All right, next slide, please. All right, so we got a lot of House bills to talk about. These are all bills that have cleared the House and they're now awaiting action in the Senate. There's a lot of bills stacked up in the Senate Education Committee right now. So it'll be interesting to see. I have not seen the agenda for this week yet, but I anticipate they'll have the regularly scheduled meeting on Thursday. They can call special meetings as well. So we may see a special education committee or two perhaps called to take up some of these bills. House Bill 6 is the budget bill. That one is now in conference committee. So you may have seen that yesterday that you had members from both chambers along with a lot of LRC staff working on kind of going through the differences between the two versions of the budget. And so they'll start to hammer out those details. Senate Bill or House Bill 22 is one of a couple. 169 there in the middle is the other one that deal with automatic defibrillators. This is another recurring theme. So just kind of cleaning up some language from past sessions and building off of some other bills that have been passed. House Bill 96 would mandate a moment of silence and reflection at the start of the school day. House Bill 142 is one of several bills that have been trying to address essentially just vaping, right, and vaping in schools. That one picked up a House floor amendment. So again, just kind of that process of it getting amended along the way. And that floor amendment put in a lot of the things that the department really wanted to see, which was less punitive, more education, redirecting students to resources, especially for the first couple of offenses. House Bill 162 is from Chair Tipton. He's chair of the House Education Committee. And this is trying to build off of what they did last session for early literacy with the Read to Succeed bill. This would start to address early math education, so early numeracy. This one has changed a lot along the way. So we've been involved, the department's been involved early on in drafting this legislation, and we were very intentional to not focus on the same grades as Read to Succeed. So it initially started out as 4 to 8, grades 4 to 8. We heard from the field that no, we really want it to be a wider range, and then we've just kind of gone back and forth ever since. So there's been several different versions of the bill. We'll see if it goes anywhere in the Senate. I suspect that it may not this session, and that instead we see Chair Tipton really start to continue this conversation during the interim and try to work on a version for next session. But it's a very important topic, and I think it's one that we're going to have to see addressed at some point in order to really start to move the needle on some of the test scores. House Bill 227 is another bill from Chair Tipton. I think this one really, he actually filed this or a version of this last year as well, but it's a process for contiguous school districts to merge. You'll see at the very end, there's a number of task forces that are going to meet in the interim. And I think that this idea of perhaps when or how some districts should merge may come up again. So House Bills 275 and 300 are somewhat related, but sort of opposite ends of the spectrum. So House Bill 275, you may have heard about in the news both this session and last session. This version of this bill also made it to the Senate last year and ran out of time. But it's trying to close the loopholes that allow a very small number of bad actors to essentially move from district to district without ever being held accountable. Obviously, most teachers have the health and wellness of their students that they're at front of mind, but we do have a small number of bad actors, and that's what this bill is trying to address. House Bill 300 is sort of the opposite side of that, and it is trying to put in timelines for the EPSB so that when an allegation is made against the teacher, there's sort of a timetable for the teacher to know when things will get resolved. So again, kind of related, but two ends of the spectrum. Next slide, please. So in the House version of the budget, there were two new initiatives. One was paid student teaching. It would have offered up to a $5,000 stipend during the semester that someone was doing their student teaching. It also introduced this new student loan forgiveness just for teachers. That's a whole new program. Both of those were under IKEA. They administer all of the state aid and federal aid. So they're not under the department, but wanted to mention them. And House Bill 377 was filed just to clean up some of that language. The Senate version of the budget also includes paid student teaching. So that's looking very likely that that gets done. So that's really exciting to have paid student teaching very close to happening. And then loan forgiveness was not in the Senate version, but the Senate upped the amount of money going to the existing teacher scholarship. So I'm still addressing that particular issue just in kind of a different way. So again, that's one of those things that will get discussed during their conference committee and likely free conference committee. So we'll just have to wait and see what they decide to do. But it does look like they'll do something related to teacher loans, whether that's increasing the teacher scholarship or doing the loan forgiveness pilot. But it does look like paid student teaching will happen, and I think it's going to be a $5,000 stipend. So I think that was the same in both versions of the budget. House Bill 387 is another teacher certification win. This one relating to substitutes. This would remove the 64-hour college credit requirement if districts want to do that. So districts that have a deep pool of substitutes with the current requirements could keep those in place. But districts that are struggling to find substitutes could lower that threshold to a high school degree or equivalent. 447 is another transportation related bill. This one is addressing some transportation woes that I'm sure you all have heard about happening in districts throughout this school year. And this would open up for student transportation via passenger vehicles. The department has reminded folks along the way that school buses are the safest way to transport students. They're big, they're heavy, they're visible. That said, we were able to work with the sponsor and others to address some concerns, to make sure things like drug testing for people driving the passenger vehicles mirrors, excuse me, what we have for folks driving school buses, inspections for passenger vehicles, that sort of thing. House Bill 471 is something I think the department and districts are already doing, but it would just codify it, and that's pre-enrollment for military connected students. House Bill 611 is trying to address truancy. That's been a huge topic of concern the past year or so. So a lot of discussion about this in the interim. So not at all surprised to see a truancy bill. And House Bill 825 is an audit of the department. So we have, as someone mentioned earlier on, we'll hopefully have a new commissioner coming on board midsummer. And so I think the thought here is to kind of help give them a roadmap for where to go. So that's, I think, all of the House bills that have moved. Oh, actually, I just realized that House Bill 499 is not on here, but I'll just mention it because it's a high priority bill for us. So our Office of Career and Technical Education has been working really for the past year with Senator Givens and some others on coming up with a new model to distribute CTE funding that's appropriated every year by the General Assembly. So they made a huge investment in career and technical education back in the 22 budget. That allowed for some really exciting things to happen in that space. And so now they're trying to kind of build off of that. So we had Senator Givens file a bill in the Senate, and Representative McCool filed a version or companion, meaning the same version of it in the House. That's 499. That's now over in the Senate. Yeah, so hopefully we'll see that pop up on Senate Education this week and start its journey over there. All right, next slide, last slide. So in addition to all of the legislation, there are also a number of resolutions that are establishing task forces to meet in the interim. This is a lot of task forces. I don't know that all of these are going to happen, but I'll mention a few that I think are moving and likely to happen. So that early childhood education task force, that's another big topic of conversation right now, is that early childhood space. So I think we are likely to see that happen. And the Autism Education Task Force, the SEEK Task Force, so looking at how we, the SEEK formula basically. I know that there was a SEEK task force that just ended a few years ago, so I think everyone's hoping that this new version will essentially pick up where that one left off and not try to start all over again. The Efficient and Effective School District, you probably have heard which districts that's related to. So that's a very specific task force that will almost certainly meet. Then the Red Tape Reduction Task Force, this is one we've heard quite a lot about. I think that there's a growing awareness that we are really putting a lot of requirements and mandates on teachers. And so I think they're really wanting to look and see if any of those are now, have they run their course? Are there things we're requiring that we could do differently? Things like that. There's that School District Consolidation Task Force that's related to that continuous merger bill. The Homeschool Task Force, the DEI Impact Task Force. Not sure how, I don't know that all these are going to happen. This is a lot of task forces. This would be a lot to high for 151, probably not so much for 120. I don't know. It's a lot of task forces and a lot of reports due in December. All right. Well, that's like the 5-10 minute version of what's happened for the past 3 months over in Frankfort. As always, it'll be a wild ride to the finish line. Right now, the final 2 days of this session are scheduled for Friday, April 12th and Monday, April 15th. I would not be surprised if the 15th gets changed to the 13th. I don't really see them sending everybody home for 2 days and then reconvening back in Frankfurt for the final day. But we will likely see the Senate budget here next week, or the final version of the budget that they'll send to the governor for action. So that's exciting. But yeah, so lots still to go. A lot of time left in Frankfurt. So any questions? I need to head over to the annex for House Education. So
I think Rhonda has a question.
sure.
Just a quick one. First of all,
Sure.
Thank you so much. Once things get passed, because you all have always done a wonderful job of and created the guidance on the things that went into effect immediately after legislation and then others to know about. Can we look forward to getting those summaries and that guidance issued from KDE?
I'm sure we'll do something similar, yes. So bills that don't have an emergency clause or other effective date go into effect 90 days after the session ends. The Attorney General will put out kind of the official date and an opinion a few weeks after the session ends. But yes, we'll almost certainly do that again this year.
Are there any other questions for Brian? I know he has to leave us. If not, Brian, thank you so much. That was very informative. It was very good. And I do appreciate it. I'm not sure specifically who asked for this topic, but it was very timely and very informative for this group. So thank you so much for your time, Brian, and good luck. And you're free to go, or you're welcome to stay with us.
Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Bye. All right. So we're going to move on, and I'm going to introduce Dr. Melissa Wainwright. She is here to talk to us about Kentucky's MTSS, which is the multi-tiered system of supports. And so she'll give us an update on that. And Dr. Wainwright is traveling today, and she has graciously stopped her travels and made herself available to us. So Dr. Wainwright, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll drive your slides as well. Thank you for stopping and joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to get to speak with you all. And the only thing I ask is if you hear trucks or cars in the background, I'm not driving. I'm totally pulled off and focused on what we're doing here today. I am the coordinator of the MTSS system with the Office of Teaching and Learning for Kentucky Multi-Tiered System of Support, otherwise known as KYMTSS. And I want you to notice that it's one system and multiple supports. And as we think about that, this multi-tiered system of supports provides us a framework and infrastructure that helps us to develop practices and protocols that move the system of the school and the district forward. Just, you can keep that, but I want you guys to think about a student. No, it's fine. You can leave on that. It's fine. Think of a student or a group of students and think about that student from the perspective of what is it that that student or group of students needs to be successful and to maximize their learning. Just get that in your mind. Think of a student. It might be your own. They're unique in nature and they have different learning needs, different behavioral needs, different social emotional needs. And want you to also think about this. So we think about the student, what is it that the student needs? And as we have our limited time today, think about what is it that adults might need in order to assist that student in being successful and maximizing their learning. And thinking about that, think about all the adults that are involved and have a touch point on that student's lives. You have family members, you have caregivers, principals, teachers, coaches, academic coaches, athletic coaches. That's what I was trying to get out there. So many touch points. And this Kentucky multi-tiered system has the potential, the ability to bring that collective body together to maximize the effectiveness of meeting that student's needs. You can see on the screen a definition that KYMTSS has for the multi-tiered system of supports, highlighting it's a prevention system. We want to create systems that are preventative instead of reactive, that are proactive to support the student in their academics and their social emotional behavior. And then the other word is that it's integrated. We don't do these in isolation because a whole child, we can't separate all those things out. They're a collective, unique individual. So as we talk about this, this is the grounding work of KYMTSS to have some common language. On the next slide, you'll see a graphic that is a circle that depicts 6 essential elements of KYMTSS. I want to point out that it's not linear. One element is not more important or less important. They're all needed in order to build that framework that maximizes the potential for success for our students. And if you notice in the circle, on the outer side, it says equitable access and opportunity. That surrounds all the work that happens, that we provide a framework and a structure that provides our students with the resources and academic resources and opportunities for success. Thinking about that encompassing everything, equitable access and opportunity. I want you to move in the circle there and you see a triangle. Many of you may have seen that triangle before as an image that you see for response to intervention, PBIS, a multi-tiered system of support. In this case, the triangle represents a piece of the multi-tiered system of supports, remembering that it's one of the 6 essential elements. A tiered delivery model, in our case, has 3 tiers. Tier 1 is the universal. What is it that all of our students get for their academics, their behavior, and their social emotional needs? And that would take the school community, the district, thinking about what is it that we want all of our students to have in order to be successful. The intent is that 100% of our students are successful with grade level standards and behavioral, social, emotional competencies. Some students require an additional layer of support. That's what we call tier 2 or targeted support, where they receive, in addition to tier 1, supplemental instruction, intervention, and support. And then some students need individualized or intensive, what we call tier 3 instruction, intervention, and support. And if you notice surrounding the triangle, it says academics, behavior, social, and emotional, because all of that is within that tiered delivery model. Then moving to the blue part, I'm going to go to the evidence-based instruction, intervention, and support. And that's what is used as a part of the tiered delivery system to increase the likelihood of achieving positive outcomes, to provide that educator with evidence-based resources and practices to let them use tools that are known to produce an effective piece of evidence that would say it's going to work with those students. So we use evidence-based instruction, intervention, and support. You may have heard or will hear about high quality instructional resources as a tool, an academic resource for evidence-based instructional materials. So we have our evidence-based. I'm going to move up to the top two there in blue and talk about them together. That's the collaborative problem-solving team and the data-based decision-making. These teams there are multiple teams. So we would have at a district, a school team that would look at district level data and make decisions based on that data. We'd have a school MTSS team that would look at school-wide data. And there are also, you've probably heard of content grade level teams that meet, and those are sometimes referred to as PLCs. And then there are teams that look at individual student data, and they look at the academic, the behavior, and the social emotional. I want to give you an example of what that might look like. I was working with a district, and they were looking at their district data. The district data indicated that kindergarten and first grade had some foundational literacy gaps. In fact, quite a large number of students that needed additional instruction, intervention, and support. At the onset, that team said, oh, we need to look at a new resource. We need to make sure that we are providing professional learning. We need to look at our schedules. Are we really utilizing the time we have? Yes, those are all things to consider. However, because the team was looking at academics, behavior, attendance, a holistic data set, they were able to uncover that, in fact, a large number of those students, K1, actually were not coming to school on time, and they were missing a half or more of that literacy block. And what they had as a root cause of that was to first address the attendance issue. It's hard to know if the student is responding to literacy instruction if they're not in the seat. And that formed a partnership with that district to increase the school and family and community partnership to say, we need our students here. We need your student here to be able to provide the literacy instruction. And as time went on and they worked together collaboratively, they were able to have more students in place, and students were able to respond to the literacy instruction. Yes, they had some instructional pieces and some professional learning and some scheduling needs, but the first part was to get to that attendance issue. And had they been looking at those in isolation, they might not have come to the root cause. And that's what we consider as that collaborative problem-solving, data-based decision-making, those essential elements. And last but not least, the family school community partnerships. And I actually landed on that one last simply because I wanted to segue into some resources and what that looks like. But I really want to highlight that these are not intended to be in isolation. It works the most efficiently and effectively when all 6 essential elements are strong and working together. So what do these school community partnerships look like? They look like having a school community that's positive and welcoming for families, that it's a place where students and families and caregivers and educators feel welcomed, and it's a collective unit of people working together. There's two-way communication where there's time for listening and sharing, and there's opportunities to give feedback, and there's opportunities to respond to the feedback. In a school that has a strong and healthy family school community partnership, there's opportunities to come to the table together and to say, this is what we value, to set goals, to set visions, to respond to data. And going back to the example I gave you of the district with the attendance and the literacy issue, it was so much stronger because they started to connect with their families, with their community, to say, what can we together do to meet the needs of our students? There are meaningful opportunities for families to come to the school and have real interactions with people. And I think when we have a strong school community family partnership, it's really one that understands the makeup of that population, that we have schools in different parts of the state, that a family school community partnership may look different because the population is different. There may be different language needs. There's lots of different reasons. And so the the point of the partnership is to really work together to meet that whole child. The other is to, in the teaming structure, represent the faces and voices of the families and school community so that it's really a representation of the holistic community. And so thinking about that, that's what I think the partnership looks like in practice. What are some resources that might support that relationship? On the next slide, I want to take you to the KYMTSS landing page. And there's a QR code that'll let you access that. The image is also linked, so you can go back to it. I know a QR code can be tempting to go to it right now, and if you want to, that's fine. I'm going to walk you through it just a little bit. This is the landing page that gives the overview, the why of KYMTSS. You'll notice that at the top it says essential elements. There's a drop down and you can go to that and look and explore each essential element a little bit more. And there's a resource library that's there that has a self-assessment tool. It has an implementation guide. There's a 4-part video collection. One that might be of interest to this group specifically is there's an MTSS overview that talks more about the framework, but all of those videos are there in that 4-part video collection. And there are also resources for each of the 6 essential elements. There's also on that page where it says new resources, and right there are also the video collection that I talked about, as well as a new tool that is a data inventory. And that is for a school or a district to be able to bring all of their data sources together in academics, behavior, and social emotional to see what they have available, and are they missing any? Are there some that are no longer needed, that it would be a better use of time to utilize some new data sources? That inventory is there. On the next slide, if you were to go to the Family, School, and Community Partnership page, this is what it would look like with the overview and the why it's essential. Up at the top, there's a blue arrow, and on the website is a place to connect with the KYMTSS newsletter that comes out monthly. If you're not getting that and you'd like to, that's a place to go. And then next to that is an archive that has all of the newsletters that have happened since the inception of this website. And this Family School Community Partnership gives a further explanation of what that looks like within the MTSS framework. And on the next slide is what it would look like if you were to click on the resources. And this one is still one I'm adding to all of them. This is one that I actually, in preparation for coming to talk to you all today, I found some others that I'm really exploring to see how might we increase this particular resource page. But you'll notice the featured resources that are there. And I love the family-friendly schools that you all have worked with the Pritchard Committee and others to develop. I think that is a really great way to show that we can meet people where they are and encourage them to move forward in the process. It is a work in progress, and that resource is highlighted there, as well as the toolkit and the PTA standards document. And then there are other resources down below that have for SEL, for data, and for academics. If you're not familiar with that family guide for standards, that's a really good guide where you can look at your individual student's standard and look at the family guide that's there. That being said, I'd also like to say that if this group has other resources that they'd like me to consider, on my last slide, I have my contact information, and I would welcome those tools and resources that I might consider to increase that level of resource on that page. I believe it's a strong, essential element, and I want it to be one that schools and districts are considering and not putting it in a linear level to address it. Then it needs to be addressed as we're building the framework, the infrastructure, so that family and communities, their voices, their faces are represented in the process. And you can see my contact information there. I would welcome if you want to reach out for further conversation, give me an email and we'll set up a time to talk. I appreciate the work that you all do, and thank you for your time today.
Dr. Wainwright, thank you so much. That was very helpful. It was informative. I look a lot of times at my role as being a dot connector, and I see some great connections there. Are there any questions or further discussion from the group while we have Dr. Wainwright with us?
Well, me again.
Go
I
ahead,
do,
Rhoda.
and one of the reasons I'm so grateful that you've joined us and helping, because one of the key components is family engagement through this. And I see in practice, a lot of times what happens is when, again, and I love how you expressed in the beginning, this is a preventative, because how we see it approached through this MTSS, Kentucky's RTI method is it's reactive, right? We're reacting to where they are struggling and getting those immediate supports to them. And I see it's more, I guess, they're in practice, we see where families are not involved with their individual children or have the opportunity or know how to help support as they go through this multi-tiered support. And I think how we can help one another is help families to be able to do that, because a lot of times when these interventions are put into place, as a family, you're told, okay, we're going to put these interventions in, let's see how they do. And it's almost like you're isolated from the process. And I think it would be so helpful if we're all a part of it from the get-go, because our children, we help reinforce those interventions. We need to, as parents, have those tools to be able to help our child so they can succeed. So however we can help, I would love to learn more and see how we can support as a council and our individual agencies or groups, how we can support this and spread the word.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Any other further discussion? All right, well, we're going to move on. Dr. Wainwright, thank you so much. And we do appreciate you stopping in your travels to safely present to us. I know in the interest of time, again, you are welcome to stay with us, just as I said to Brian. We understand if you do need to leave us and move on. And so thank you so much for coming today and sharing that information. And I want to thank again the individual that requested this update. I do see Dr. Chang has joined us, and so we are going to move into our next topic, which is chronic absenteeism. So Dr. Chang, I think I see you.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
And I know the busy lady, everybody's busy today. She's been in a previous meeting, and so we were so fortunate that she could make time as well to join us. So Dr. Chang, I'll drive your slides and it's all yours.
Thank you. And just so you know, my contact is right here on the front slide. So you all can definitely reach out to me for any questions or comments after this presentation. Next slide. Okay, so we wanted to bring kind of a really timely topic to you all and get your kind of thoughts. Chronic absenteeism is something that is really hitting nationally, internationally, and statewide right now across a lot of districts. And what it is it's basically kids are missing school. And this is the official definition on this slide. One of the things that makes it different from like truancy is that chronic absenteeism includes excused and unexcused absences. So kids who are like taking vacation with their family during school, kids who are at a doctor's appointment, kids who are sick, those all count in this definition, along with being suspended and other things. So it's really just missing school, and you are considered chronically absent if you are missing at least 10% of the school year. So typical school year might be 175 school days. That would be about 17 and a half days if you are enrolled in a Kentucky school the entire year, just to give you an example. So that's the official definition. Let's look at the data next. Okay, so pre-pandemic, we were already worried about absenteeism. We had already seen about 1 out of every 6 students were chronically absent. Post-pandemic, that number has almost doubled. So now it's about 1 in 3 students. That's our most current data from the last school year. And so we're looking at about 1/3 of our kids are chronically absent. And if you look by different groups of kids, that's even higher. So among like our students who are homeless, that is 50% are chronically absent. Among students from an economically disadvantaged background, it's 37%. Students with a disability, 36%. Foster care, 35%, and Black or African American students, 35%. So we are seeing significant numbers of kids, especially kids in these groups you see on the screen, are chronically absent. So it is a high concern. And so if you go to the next slide, it's probably no surprise, this is absolutely tied to student outcome. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew chronic absenteeism at any age is connected to academic outcomes. So whether you're talking about preschool, even preschool, kindergarten students who are missing school at this chronically absent level, they are showing differences in academic skills compared to their peers who are at school most days. It's true at 3rd grade. So all through elementary. And then when you go to middle and high school, this was kind of like crazy to me. I saw this, the Department of Education, Institute of Education Sciences, they released a summary report that showed you are 7 times more likely to drop out if you were chronically absent even just 1 year. And so it is a very worrisome data point to see 30% of our kids right now are chronically absent. So let's go to the next slide. So here are some research-based reasons for why we are seeing kids that are chronically absent. These are probably very familiar to you. I know I'm a parent with kids who struggle with some of these things. So one reason why they're not coming, barriers like something keeping them from being at school. So it could be like, we have a bus driver shortage. So it could be transportation. It could be that you are working another job for your family. And so you are missing school for that reason. So there's barriers. There's also aversion. Aversion has to do with, I'm not going to school, and there's a reason. So it could be something with bullying, peers, mental health right now, also another issue that we're seeing post-pandemic. So anxiety, and then also not feeling success in school, you're struggling academically or behaviorally, and that might be a reason why you're not coming to school. And then the last 2 reasons, disengagement. This is like that apathy. So you might be hearing about just kids coming back from pandemic and feeling a sense of apathy, lack of connection. They just kind of formed some bad habits during COVID, and that is not recovered yet. And then misconceptions is one where, we were being told during the pandemic, keep your kids, home for any kind of symptoms. And now there might be like an overly cautious approach to keeping kids home for health reasons. And then also people just having a misconception that it's only unexcused absences. So they forget that excused absences actually still is missing instructional time, and that could be another reason. And also kids are feeling like, well, if it's on the Google Drive or if it's on my device, I can just do it at home. And so I don't have to be in school. So those are different reasons for why kids are missing. This actually presents a lot of challenges for our teachers, as you can imagine. So these are just a few things that we are seeing from our educators, that they are also struggling when this is going on. So just the sheer number of chronically absent kids right now can be very overwhelming to our educators. And partly it's because of these other reasons on this slide. So we know that building relationships is one of the key aspects of a successful kind of student school family school relationship and outcome. So having those strong relationships is very challenging if kids are not in the building, so, or not face to face. So that is one big challenge. Instructional and intervention continuity, that is always a challenge for our educators. If kids are in and out of the classroom, how do you adjust instruction to make sure everybody is getting what they need, and that the interventions that they have been put, like small group interventions, are in place, like what Melissa was just saying with MTSS. You've got kids on a plan, and if they're chronically absent, that continuity is disruptive. And then finally, something like instructional approaches, I know I didn't think about till I started talking to teachers that it can be very challenging because we know with like United We Learn and a lot of the innovation happening in education, the most engaging things that kids get are when it's hands-on, relevant, project-based learning. Those are very engaging ways to deliver information and work with kids. Well, project-based learning and team projects and hands-on projects are really hard if you're not in school. So those are challenges to our educators. So next slide. So at KDE, these were just a few of the things that we're doing to try to help our schools and our districts face this challenge, and what are some things that they can do that have shown impact. And so that's why this group is so important, because families really are at the heart of this in working with families. And so we've been talking to our districts about creating that very welcoming culture. Always check that, you make the assumption that, of course, we have a great welcoming culture, but sometimes it's like, well, let's look at the data. Let's survey our families. Let's make sure that they actually do feel welcome, and all families feel welcome, not just some families. So just creating that sense of belonging is really the first piece. The second piece is to check on your academic instruction. So we're talking to people about, one of the other challenges, it's all interconnected, right, is our educator shortages. So we have educator shortages that may be leading to, a lot of substitutes or class coverage by other teachers. And so if kids do not see that meaningful learning happening in the classroom, they may feel less connected. So just checking to make sure that you want, these instructional classes are as engaging as possible. So that's another thing to check. And then the third one is really where I'm curious if you all heard this in your schools or your friends in their schools, is communication with families. Getting attendance as a issue on the forefront, where you are really hearing about it only takes 2 days a month to impact learning. So it's not that much in 2 days. When you survey parents and you actually ask them how many days has your kid missed, research shows they underestimate. And so it doesn't take long to create kind of this idea that, oh, my kid's okay. And so what we find, and what the national research finds, is that if you talk to families about their attendance and you actually share the data back, like I know I get a text from my own kids. She's a public school student in Kentucky, and I get a text just telling me what her attendance has been. That's been really helpful. That's brand new to me this year, and I found that really helpful. So having an attendance campaign. And then the last two things are tracking, and we track and utilize data. So we're showing our districts like how to get to their data, early warning systems. It's a whole nother topic I can always talk about a million times. So if you're ever interested in the data piece, there's so much data that we're lucky to have in Kentucky. And then the last, but actually most important piece is engaging with families. And so what other states have found that are currently making like a reversal of what we're seeing chronic absenteeism. There are some states like Connecticut, they've actually been able to reverse the post-pandemic trend, and they have put families and community at the top of their list of what they're doing. And so they are working with families with proactive communication, doing home visits, and really talking about attendance as a how can we help you? Versus why is your kid not in school? Kind of approaching it from a very supportive lens to figure out we all have stressors in our lives, and trying to help the families work through whatever challenge it is. Not surprisingly, it seems like common sense, but a lot of times people will go straight to truancy court, or you're in trouble, or what's going, kind of a punitive. So really creating that positive connection with families has shown to be one of the keys to creating a reversal in this. Okay, next slide. So I'm just curious, and you all can feel free to use the chat or come off mute if you want. And really either of these questions, just why do you think attendance is a challenging issue? And have you seen anything that could be helpful to families and students? Because we would love to be able to share some of those, your perspectives. It's a real-time challenge, and we really need to hear from our different stakeholder groups. So I'd love to hear anybody's thoughts.
I think Laura has her hand up. Laura Beard.
I do. Thank you. Hi, I'm Laura Beard, and I'm with the Pritzker Committee. I oversee our Commonwealth Institute for Parent Leadership, and so this is a hot topic amongst our parents. And just to share a couple of things, I do think COVID impacted attendance and the myths and conceptions around what counts, what doesn't, that kind of thing. So for many of our parents, they find that they have to dig to find the attendance policy. It's not, if we're in a space where this is a real issue, it would be helpful if the schools had it more forward facing. So it sounds like the text message you're getting is that's a really cool way to communicate with parents. And I think the parents that I've spoken with would like more of that information. I've heard things from some parents get notifications that especially their high schoolers might have met their credits for the year, and they have the option to be in the classroom or not be in the classroom. There's a lot of local inconsistencies around tardies and what tardies count and what don't. And so parents just kind of said to me, we just need to know where to find this information. We kind of go over it with some attendance works that, those one-pagers for families and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they found that very valuable, but they're looking for more communication from their schools. So anything we can do to improve that communication would be really helpful.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I don't think we've heard that exact advice. So I think that's going to be really great to be able to share that out, is to have your attendance policies on the forefront. And I do think that people may not even realize there is an attendance policy. So thank you for sharing that. That's very helpful.
Thank you, Laura. Rhonda, I think you have a question as well. Do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to share some of our perspective that we're seeing. I think this ties directly into the presentation that was just given, and is that, and what I had said before is that, we're seeing Kentucky MTSS being used as a corrective measure, not being used as a proactive, because those systems and supports are not being immediately put into place. And especially when you're talking about absenteeism related to social, emotional, and behavioral, we're not getting those interventions in place immediately. And so you're going to see these absences. I'm very happy to see that you have listed there too, that they're not being challenged. They're feeling like they're given busy work. They're not, they're not, feeling that it's benefiting them, right? And we want them to be, we're raising them up because we want them to be strong self-advocates. We want them to strive for more. But, given the constraints and what, we're all trying our best, but that does play a huge role. I think looking at, too, the punitive approach is way overused, and this isn't just in one area of the state. This is the go-to, and that should actually be that should be your last resort. in my opinion, because you should have these other factors in place way before then. And one of the reasons you're seeing the numbers so high for students with disabilities is things aren't being implemented that should be through, say, their IEP or support. So there's a lot of factors, I think, that play a role. And I think we could help with that. Our group, I'm not just here to bring the problems, we're here to help, right? Because it's going to take every one of us.
Thank you for sharing that. You're absolutely right. I think every school has to really personalize this and get to know every single situation that they can, because it is different. For one school, it may be bus shortages. For another school, it may be teacher shortages. And for another school, it may be something related to the instructional content and approach is not, maybe they don't have enough clubs and kids don't feel a sense of belonging. So it really is, everybody has to kind of problem solve this together. There's not going to be one solution. It is multifaceted and needs that really personal touch for this to be, to really change. So thank you for sharing.
I think I saw two questions. I see Dr. Wainwright's back. Hey, Melissa, and I saw Amity's hand. So Amity, I think I saw you first. If you'd like to come off mute.
I actually took my hand down just because Rhonda was pretty much touching on everything that I was thinking. So great minds. But I have an interesting perspective, I think, because my career kind of went faster than my personal life. So I was a teacher and then an assistant principal, staff developer, and then a principal, and then had a child. After my second child was born, I took a couple years off and had a surprise third child. Now I'm kind of easing back into some gigs, but I've stayed very involved on the parent side as like PTO president. I still do enrichment groups at the school. So I'm kind of involved in all areas. I work for NKU now. So I'm seeing a lot of things differently now as a parent. Things I would go back and, just that when I do get back into things, hopefully full time next year, it'll be interesting to come in with that real life perspective instead of just how I think I'll parent, which we all do, I think, before we actually have them. But, I have my oldest child is gifted in all areas. He's 5th grade. He still likes to go to school at this point. But I do worry about, I had not thought about that idea when you were sharing, the possible reasons why, he already, and when he was a 1st grader, started saying things like, well, I'm doing things I already know. Like, I'm tired of talking about the magic E I've been reading since I was 4. So I do think the more, funding, and I know it's impossible, but that we can put it, gifted and talented feels like it's the bottom of the list. And, I talked to our primary talent pool teacher today at my kids' school when I was there doing an observation for NKU. She has 30 kids in her primary talent pool group, and they were adding 4 more. I'm glad we have that many kids, but are they getting the quality instruction that they need with her being with 5 elementary schools as one person? And I do worry about that. I think COVID plays a major part. I have friends that their child sniffles and they leave them home. And I've tried to say we're kind of out of that. So maybe communicating new expectations for that if your kid coughs one time, they don't have to stay home until they're tested. I just think some people you're either on one end of the spectrum of I'm sending them anyway, or none of that matters. But I just think it's important. I'm doing some work with Fleming County on their local accountability system that they are piloting. I'm doing some data analysis for them. I think it's important, like you just mentioned, to look at individual districts and schools. Even you can't compare apples to oranges, and we're all dealing with different issues. So I just think more of that, looking at it locally and helping your department, helping individual schools. I don't think there's a blanket answer for the state.
Yeah. I love what you said. And I definitely think, you're hitting on a great point with gifted and talented and just that individual experience for every kid. We do encourage in some of our trainings for administrators to, if you can, shadow a student, shadow different students for the day. Go through their 7-period schedule, ride the bus with them, do it and see what it's like, because you start seeing like they don't move all day, or oh my gosh, these couple periods are kind of really hard to stay engaged, so you start seeing some of the issues that you can kind of really have control over when you are an administrator. So thank you, that was really helpful.
I think those students are sometimes just like checked off a list, like they've got it, check them off, instead of looking at their growth. Are they growing? Are they staying stagnant? And then we have all these new ways of, there is the idea of, well, I can just do it at home. Maybe we need to offer, not for everyone, but like NTI for a student who has COVID and has to stay home for a week, but they aren't that sick. Could they do NTI and not be counted as absent? Like, I don't know. Thinking outside the box.
Great. Thank you.
I think Melissa, and I'll come back. Amity, thank you so much. I wanted to touch on your remarks as well when we finish here. Melissa, I think you're next.
To respond to this, that as I was listening, so much of what the conversation, it falls within that multi-tiered system of support. If you think about the tier 1, that includes all the students that were discussed here. And I think the attendance that we're seeing, that chronic absenteeism, is honestly a data set that lets us uncover a lot of other areas that we need to address that's just been discussed here. And I feel like this discussion is exactly why we have that multi-tiered system of support. It does hurt my heart to hear that it's being used in a punitive way. That is not anything that's a part of, in the definition, the 6 essential elements. It's in fact to be proactive, preventative, and not reactive, so that we're looking ahead to say, this is what our data sets are telling us. What do we as a school community need to have in place? What do the students need? What do the adults need? And be proactive. If we know we have attendance issues, then what are we doing to address that moving forward for the next school year, for the end of this school year? And again, it hurts my heart to think of it as punitive, because that's simply a need for that exploration for the school, the district, to say what is a multi-tiered system of support.
Thank you, Melissa, so much for wrapping all that up together neatly there. Aaron, I saw Aaron's hand.
Hi, I love what you said about the individuality. I actually had an attendance issue with my own child. I'm here for the Kentucky Association of School Councils, but I had an issue with my own child. I'm a teacher in the district, and I did not know our attendance policy. So, I showed up with a doctor's note and my own child and gave them the doctor's note, and they said, we're sorry, we won't accept this doctor's note. You have to fill out a specific form that is in our board policy, and we're not going to accept your doctor's note. And I actually had time that day, so I went and talked to the DPP about it. And his statement to me was, well, we have this form because we have 14,000 students. And my statement back to him was, well, you have 14,000 students, but I have 1. And the school has 500 students. And I feel like he said we have this because some people doctor shop. Well, either way, I'm not doctor shopping, and all my doctor's notes are from the same doctor. And we had a nice conversation, but individually, I feel like we need to know our kids, and our administrators need to know our kids, and their teachers need to know their kids. And as a teacher in my building, like I'm a special area teacher, so I know all the kids in my building. I don't think it's too much to ask to know all the kids in your building and their particular situations, and or at least have somebody in your building that's an advocate for that child. Like if you have 3 administrators and you have 1,500 kids, I don't think it's too much to ask for you to know 500 kids apiece. So I like what you said about individuality and knowing those kids. I don't think that's too much to ask. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Just one trusted adult. I mean, ideally you want lots of trusted adults. Just one makes a huge difference. So thank you. Yes. And our early warning system that we train on, it's a tool in Infinite Campus. It can help administrators with kind of divvying up their caseloads. And because when you do we have upwards of 2,000 kids in some of our schools. And if 30% are chronically absent, that's several hundred. So definitely having kind of strong data systems so you can prioritize and develop your tier 2 and 3, like Melissa said. Make sure you're very clear on your tiers, and that makes all the difference to workload. So, and I definitely, whoever said take care of your educators, that speaks close to our hearts, because educators are doing so much. And right now that is, kids see that, kids see their teachers are very stressed. So that's something that, hopefully we can continue to help is the well-being of our teachers.
Thank you. This has been a great discussion. I'm going to move on to your next slide. Are you ready, Dr. Chang? And then we'll.
Yeah, this pretty much wraps it up. These
Yes.
are just some resources. Somebody referenced the Attendance Work handouts for families. That's been awesome. Attendance Works is just the best national supportive group. We work with them a lot. And so these are just some resources you can have. If you're actually interested in the data, I put a little link into our data sets because I love looking at the data. It gives you kind of, it's public data around every district. There's a chronic absenteeism file in there if you want to look up your own district. So just some great resources. And again, please, my contact was on that first slide. So please let me know if you have any thoughts or additional questions. But thank you for having me today.
We have enjoyed this. This has been a really robust and healthy conversation. And I want to make sure everyone's had an opportunity to ask their question or any further discussion before Dr. Chang leaves us, before I move on. Does anyone else have anything else to say? Ask. So thank you all so much. That was just, your questions were outstanding. And I love that we had a robust conversation that ran the entire gambit. And so, Amity, I'm going to say, I love what you shared, like from the heart. I can see as you move and you talked about it, like going back into education, what a different perspective you'll have towards the families and embracing the families and that loving heart that any family would be lucky to have you as a principal with that kind of perspective in that role. I love that we've talked gifted and talented. I raised a child in that world as well, and those battles are just as real as all the rest of them. And so when we talk through all of the pieces around chronic absenteeism and how individual that is, this has been a really, really good discussion. So Dr. Chang, thank you so much for coming. I could keep talking on and on here. We may have you back again. And so I just appreciate your knowledge and sharing and that individual piece that is just so important, that we need to know our kids. So thank you. Thank you so much. So you're welcome to stay with us. I know you're busy. You're free to stay. If you need to leave, we do certainly understand. And so I'm so glad Melissa's still here with us as well. Those were great pieces to connect. I'm now Sure, go ahead.
Just I wanted to say my apologies to right when it went to the questioning. I mean, it could not have happened more at the moment. At the moment the question was being asked, it went to I guess it was the sun coming in my car, and I could not get back on. I apologize to that. So if there is a question, feel free to reach back out. I was not avoiding questions. It's just technology.
And we know you're traveling, so we appreciate all of your efforts to stay with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.
So I just want to thank all the presenters again. I know some of them, we still have Melissa and we still have Dr. Chang. So it's been very, very helpful to hear and learn more of all of these topics together and kind of how they fit and tie together. So I'm going to move on to the next portion, which you're going to have an opportunity to hear from me now. I'm going to provide an update, just an overview and an update of the Family Partnership Council's recommendation to the Kentucky Department of Education. And so with that, you can see, again, my name is Marcia Van Hook. I am the Full Service Community Schools Manager and the Family Partnership Council Chair. And so what I'd like to do just briefly is just give you a little reminder, and I know we did this at the very, very beginning. I'm not sure we had everybody yet online, but the Family Partnership Council, like who is this? Who is this body? So originally it was established in 1999. Some of you may know this. This may be new information for others. But in 1999, it was called the Commissioners Parent Advisory Council, and it transitioned to the Family Partnership Council in 2021. And so that becomes very reflective of today's family is not just a parent. Sometimes it's a grandparent, it's an aunt, it's whoever. So it really does become more inclusive just in the name of the council. So the purpose is the council serves in an advisory role to the Kentucky Department of Education and provides input regarding topics of interest to families. We've certainly covered a lot today, such as ways that families and communities can assist schools in ensuring that the achievement level of all students is increased. And if you remember, I opened our presentation today with our purpose. So I want to pause before I get into the meat of the report, and I just want to thank all of you again today. Your attentiveness and your presentness has just been wonderful with the questions and the comments. And I would like to very briefly, since we do have new members, just take a minute, introduce yourself, or we're going to go through this pretty quickly, but just think about and give us in just a quick statement, why are you interested in the Family Partnership Council? And what is your role in this very important work? If you could just kind of process that and give us that just quickly along with your name, and we'll go right down through the members. Anyone want to start?
I can start.
Thank you, Laura. I was getting ready to call on you. Laura, I can call on Laura. Thanks, Laura.
I'm Laura Beard. I'm the director for the Commonwealth Institute for Parent Leadership at the Pritzker Committee. I'm interested in this work. I've worked in family engagement within the Department for Behavioral Health, for public health, and now in education. I'm a parent of 3 children, 1 adult child, I should say, who is also a teacher. And so I have 2 juniors in high school, foster adoptive parent as well. And so family engagement is my work, and I'm passionate about it, and I'm glad to be here as a representative of the Pritzker Committee.
Thanks, Laura. Who'd like to go next?
I'll go next. I'm here on behalf of Melissa Goins with the Family Resource and Youth Services Centers Division. We obviously are very interested in this partnership with you guys. This goes a lot into what we do. I don't know if my camera's working. Did it cut out?
It is. We can see you.
Okay. I just want to say I used to be a coordinator in the schools, and I know, I see a lot about the MTSS, and I worked on those in those groups within the school setting, and I know, what goes into that and a lot of the issues involved with that, and the need for, community engagement and family partnership in order to meet all of those needs for those multi-tiered systems. So I just want to say that I love being a part of this and hearing everyone's perspective. And I know I'm just kind of stepping in for Melissa today, but I might ask her if I can kind of be more involved in future meetings.
Thank you. And thank you for being here for Melissa. We appreciate that.
I can go.
Thanks, Amity.
I kind of gave my backwards spiel of, but I think the way I got here, I've stayed very involved in Campbell County schools. I've been PTO president at Klein Elementary since my kids started. I'm on the Family Resource Council there. Actually, I believe I got on this committee because my former, two of my former bosses, one is the director of the Northern Kentucky Co-op, asked me to be a representative. So I think I'm representing Northern Kentucky, possibly. But I mean, I'm interested in it. I think my role is from all kinds of different angles, as I mentioned before, but I have always been very interested in and involved in family engagement. I'm the child of a public school educator, so I've been involved in it literally since birth. I really want to just, I think, Erin, are you the librarian at Fort Ray?
I am.
Okay, I just want to sidebar, thank you for your academic team resources.
You're welcome.
On your website, because I'm also
You're
the
welcome.
academic team coach, and those have been incredible. So thank you for documenting those for several years.
You're
My
welcome.
parents have appreciated them.
Thank you, Amity. Erin, we'll just go to you next.
I'm Erin Weaver. I'm actually here representing the Kentucky Association of School Councils. But the reason I'm interested in Family Partnership Council, and I had to beat up 3 other people at KASC to be here. I'm just kidding. I didn't beat anybody up. But the reason I wanted to be the representative for KASC is because I think the most important thing in our school is our family partnerships. I've been doing this job for 25 years, and I can say without a doubt that I could not do it without the support of our families. And so that is why I think that being involved with our families and knowing them by name and what they do and how they work at home and getting to know as much about them as possible is the most important part of my job.
Thank you so much, Erin. That's so true. And I see some hearts for you. Rhonda, your picture is right next to Erin's on my screen. Would you mind sharing just a little bit about your work and your interest? I'm sorry, I'm going back to the slide.
No, you're good. I am Rhonda. First and foremost, I'm a sister. 3 of my siblings have disabilities from the seen to the unseen. And they had, if you're familiar with IEPs, individual education programs through school, and they're smarter than I could wish to be. I'm the proud foster adopted mom to the greatest gift of my life. And Lori, you're going to have the big one. He's 19 now. So, you know, I've been involved with this since it started back when it was a parent, and I'm so tickled now we're considered the family council. And, you know, the core of everything we do, and I'm with Kentucky STEM, Kentucky Special Parent Involvement Network. We're the Parent Training and Information Project, which is under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act for the state of Kentucky and have been since Kentucky first received one. We do this through peer support. We're all individuals with disabilities and or immediate family members, and really there to bring everybody together to work in partnership and to help make sure that everyone has the resources and the knowledge so that they can effectively engage in their child's education, and how we can support that. We work very closely with KDE and sorry, Coco's going to chime in on that too and tell you what she loves. KDE's Office of Special Education, or OSIL, I'll get the whole title, Office of Special Education and Early Learning, just how we can work together. And this is the core of everything we do, and really looking at how we can sort of bridge those gaps and help our families, but in the end, it's going to help our students succeed and really get that support too for educators, and how we can help with that, not do it for them, but help as they go through the process.
Thank you, Rhonda. Appreciate your comments today and your input today. Thank you so much. Anyone like to go next? If not, I'm going to start going down the roll just for time's
I'll
sake.
go
Go
next.
ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Brittany Faulkner, and I'm representing Green River Educational Co-op. I'm a social emotional learning specialist, but before that, I was a school counselor. And so a lot of my work is in building relationships. And I think that is not just with students, but also with families and community members. And as I was listening to some of the talks today, especially with the attendance, a big piece of that is about your climate and your culture. And so I am interested in this and just sharing those experiences.
Thank you, Brittany.
Marcia, I'll follow Brittany. Her husband was my principal. My favorite principal, I'll add, when I taught. So Brittany, I sent him a text and said, tell her I said hello if I don't get to tell her.
Yes, he told me so.
Okay, fantastic. Well, my name's Leah Markham, and personally, I was a parent first. So it was so interesting to hear how Amity said she came to this work the other way, but I was a parent. So I have 4 children. The oldest is in medical school. The second is also a future educator. So I heard maybe it was Laura say she had a child who was an educator. And then I have a high schooler, a junior in high school. Someone else said they had 2 juniors. So I'm wondering if those are twins. And then I have a 7th grade son. So have all kinds of experiences. We started out in a small private school. And then we homeschooled. And then when my kids started going to public school, I said, I'm going to go back to school and become a public educator. So I'm not going to send them without going with them. So when my youngest son started kindergarten, I started teaching that same year. So came to it from the perspective of I've been all the things with as a parent, and I volunteered and been in the school from that perspective. And now I want to be able to bring that and share that care and that love for parents and the families, and knowing the challenges. You know, it's really hard to assign a whole lot of homework at night when you know what that experience is like at home for families. So it just gives you that insight. But professionally, since leaving Mr. Faulkner's classroom and going to a couple other places, came to Southeast South Central Educational Cooperative. And here I support teachers and I support curriculum coaches and I support districts. And so have lots of touch points. I also am getting ready to start a new program for supporting early educators. And then I'm also on the side working at University of the Cumberlands. And I heard somebody else say they were working at NKU. So working with University of the Cumberlands and supporting the entry level teachers and them just getting started out. So I'm really excited to be able to take all the learning and share that with our families and whoever our commissioner, our interim, whoever that's going to be, just that perspective that we're all bringing. So I'm excited to get to do the work with you all.
Thank you so much for that, Lee. It's just so neat to hear where all of you are coming from and what great perspectives that are being brought to this work with this group. I'm going to carry on with, how about Elizabeth? Do you go by Ashley or Elizabeth? Are you here?
I go by Ashley, but I always
Okay.
put the full thing on there so people know who I am. I am interested in the Family Partnership Council because number one, I'm a parent of 2 teenagers, and I'm also interested in it because in my day job, I prosecute the dependency, neglect, and abuse docket for a county in Western Kentucky. So I see the full gamut of all the issues that are affecting our underprivileged families mostly, but not all. I have a variety of different families that end up in my courtroom. I was asked to be on the council by Gretchen Wetzel, who is the head of WKEC, and I appreciate her having me do this because I love to hear all of the different perspectives and viewpoints that everybody has. But my biggest job is as a parent to 2 students. That's my most important job in all of this.
Thank you so much, Ashley. It's great to meet you and see you and hear a little bit about you there. Tara.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Tara Truecore, and I am representing OVEC Head Start, Early Head Start program, and we serve all the counties surrounding Shelby County. I'm interested in the Family Partnership Council because I'm a family engagement specialist, which I go out and support the family advocates that support the Head Start families. We work with low-income families. And, you know, listening to the presentations earlier, it all fits into everything that you all were talking about. So I'm very excited about that. You know, we're dealing with attendance issues. We're dealing with getting parents more involved. And that's, you know, a lot of what our program is, you know, getting those partnerships going. And I'm also, you know, on this council as well, because our CEO had asked me to represent OVEC and OVEC Head Start as well. So I'm very excited for this, you know, to get more ideas, share ideas, and see, you know, which way we can go with that. You know, I'm also a parent of 2 teenagers. Well, one just turned 20, so not so teenager anymore. But, you know, we had attendance issues and, you know, throughout high school. And it was through COVID and, you know, working from home, you know, they're doing a lot of things online. And I didn't find out until later that he was missing a lot of his Zoom things. So, you know, the attendance issue is a big thing as long, you know, and as well as in Head Start, we're seeing a lot of chronic absences due to illness. And you know, like you all were talking about, you know, having parents maybe misunderstanding, you know, when kids are sick and when they're really, you know, when they are and when they're really not, when they can come. And so we've seen a big issue with that as well. So I'm very excited about all this and getting to know all of you and you know, see what we can all learn together.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I will promise I will practice on your last name. So I know for sure what it is. True core. I think I have it.
True core. Yeah, I always say true to the core. So true core.
That's a great way to remember that. Jamie Helton, are you here? Maybe not. We've lost a couple people. I saw Amy Nickerson. Are you?
Hi, yes, I'm Amy
Hi.
Nickerson. I am a mom of 2 young boys. I have a 2nd grader and a rising kindergartner. I serve as a PTO president at my son's school. I have been actively working to try to have improved parent involvement at school, which if you've been involved with finding a volunteer for something there, it can be extremely challenging. So part of my goal with working on this council was to learn more about how I can help parents feel more confident about being involved at school. I am here from the Central Kentucky Educational Co-op. Holly Lawrence had asked me to participate in this, and I'm really looking forward to it. I also have a younger son that has multiple food allergies. So I kind of think of how that will play a role in what his education will look like starting next year. So I'm anxious to learn lots of things here, and I was very pleased with all of the presenters today. It was a wonderful meeting.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your questions earlier as well. I'm trying to go down through my list. Let's see. Have we, Alicia, are you with us? Alicia Miller? I've lost her. Tom Haggard. Sure, I saw Tom. Chris Medley. Is there anyone I missed that hasn't had an opportunity to introduce themselves? I'll briefly tell you a little bit about myself since everyone's been so open and transparent. I too am a parent, and just as several of you have said, I entered education before I became a parent. It was interesting. I tell this story a lot. I started life as a kindergarten teacher and ended up as a high school principal, and then on at the district level as a principal coach and working with schools on school improvement. A funny story is when my child started kindergarten, she was actually in the room next door to me, and she cried and cried, and you would have thought I dropped her off on the moon. So when you get in those roles as a parent, you do have a new set of eyes and a different heart. And I see a lot of you laughing. You get my point. But that was really hard. But she is a grown adult and does just fine now. She lives in another state. So we've cut the cord a little bit. So moving on. I'm really interested in this work. I have transitioned into the role. I'm going to talk about that in a slide, so I don't want to jump too far ahead, into the full service community schools and working closely with the Pritchard Committee and Laura on a couple different councils and committees. Laura and I work quite a bit together. And just the role that the parent can have and making sure that parents understand how they can connect and become involved. A lot of times that is a piece that they want to, but they don't quite know how, because we don't always make it really easy for them as educators. And so with that eye, and I look at myself, and I've said it earlier, I'm kind of a dot connector, like where do these resources lie and how do we connect them and make sure everyone has access to them? So I hope that that's a little bit about my interest and who I am in coming to this committee. And you all have been super patient, and I know by time we have 15 minutes, I promise I have about 8 slides. I will make it quick. But here's where I want to go next, just the history. The Family Partnership Council members that were here before will know, who served on the 21-23 council. The former chairperson, Brooke Gill, who was at the Pritchard Committee, you all worked together to compile a report that just really reflected the progress that Kentucky made in honoring the recommendations set forth by the Commissioner's Parent Advisory Council. And I think, Rhonda, you said you were part of that work. If I remember correct, I may not be. In 2000, okay, good. I see you nodding. In 2007 to present. And so that report just addressed whether or not Kentucky had made progress on those previous recommendations, but it also established some next steps for the current, which is us, council members, to actually see through. And so what I'm going to do today is just walk you through the 4 recommendations and kind of summarize them. The final report was sent out to you. If you haven't had a chance to read it, that's fine. I'm just going to hit the highlights of the recommendations. So recommendation 1 is to encourage districts and schools to develop those local web pages that include more robust, which has been our conversation, more robust relationship building and communication metrics regarding meaningful family and community engagement. And so what does all that mean? Let's summarize that out a little bit. It's actually to utilize the 4 C's, which are connection, cognition, competence, and capacity from the dual capacity building framework. And I cited a source for you there. To utilize that work to really begin to look at how do we bring them in? Like how can we make this a much more open and transparent? I love the suggestion that came up, like parents don't know that attendance policy. How do we put that out there so that parents actually know what that policy is? And then KDE's Full Service Community Schools Manager, which I'm currently in that role, highlights schools with innovative practices and strong family partnerships. Part of that work that I'm engaged in is actually with the Pritchard Committee with Laura, and we're actually looking at, we have a pilot group of schools, and I don't want to get too far down in that. That's another whole topic, but really working with the community and the parents to really look at those root causes of what may be an issue for the school, or things that they can actually leverage to increase family and community engagement and partnership for student success in those schools. So that's some of the work that I'm currently engaged in. And then highlighting those best practices. The second recommendation that came from the report was to actually hire this role, the Full Service Community Schools Manager, that's fully funded by the Pritchard Committee through December of 2027. And so that has been done. That was created in September 1, and I moved into this position in October. I think all of us kind of transitioned over into this work with the initiative. So the focus is on gathering and distributing best practices for family and community engagement within KDE, and then data and stories of impact. And so part of my role that I see is I try to make sure we have some strategic alignment between what is going on and what is being expected of schools with all of the pieces that we have available to us within KDE and within our external family engagement state partners. There's a lot of good work that's going on, but how do we bring all of this together and align those pieces so that we're not just kind of lost in the dark. If I work in this area, I know about this resource. If I'm in this part of the state, I don't know about that resource, but it is available for everyone. Also, to streamline the coaching and the training for district level staff to help with that family and community engagement initiatives. And so if you think about it, we talked about earlier, and Amy, I'm going back to you, like you said, you know, you were an educator first and moved through, and then you became the parent. And those perspectives are so important. How do we provide that kind of training in terms of understanding the family lens that they can bring just with the coaching and the training that's given to the district level staff? So that's what that reminds me of. And then just the role creates a robust feedback mechanism from this group that I can take back into the work that I'm doing at KDE and with the Pritchard Committee and with other schools and districts, so that it all can kind of come together. The third recommendation from the final report says that in 2024, the Family Partnership Council will make recommendations to local educational agencies, which we refer to as LEAs, and other state organizations on one or more tools that will support schools in navigating those educational options and rights. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit in our conversations along the way today within Kentucky's educational system. And then in 2025, the Family Partnership Council will partner with KDE and other organizations to create an online, age-indexed, family-friendly guide that shares the most effective ways for schools to partner with families. So let's break that one down. And what that means is the Family Partnership Council will work with KDE. So the first bullet that I pulled from that is to create a one-stop web page for parental and student rights, school-based decision-making, which we all know and refer to as SBDM, council information, those legislative updates, Brian so graciously came and shared for us, specific English learner or EL resources in 2024. And then to expand this work, just so that we include the other organizations to provide a really widely accessible, age-appropriate strategies for schools to enable families to become more engaged. And so if those of us that are parents, we've worked in education, we're in a peripheral educational entity, we know that oftentimes the younger the student, the more involved the parent. And the older they get and they come to high school, there's less involvement. And sometimes it's, you know, it's really, really hard to get a parent to engage and Lee, I think you said it, like you're sending all this work home and you have to know these kids because you know what's going on at home or not going on at home. And so just really working through how do we have that kind of resource available. There's lots of resources. I mentioned it earlier. I kind of feel like that dot connect, like how do I connect this piece to this piece? How is this connected to this piece? And how do we make all of that information so much easier for parents to access? So that was the recommendation that came out of this. And then the fourth recommendation was the Family Partnerships Council's work in 2024 to 2026 is to assist in the implementation of those three previous goals. And most importantly, support many more schools' adoption of the Kentucky Family and School Partnership Guide. And so to break that one down, FPC with KDE leadership support will identify strategies for districts and schools around family engagement, tracking continuous progress. This is a lot. So enhanced equity around parent leadership. I've heard a little bit about that one today. Integration and streamlining of those required family engagement efforts in more meaningful ways. And so you see there's a list like Title I Part A, your CSIPs and your CDIBs, and then the SBDM councils. And this includes, and again, I don't want to use acronyms, but it's spelled out here. Comprehensive School Improvement Plan is the CSIP, and Comprehensive District Improvement Plan is the CDIP, and then we have the School-Based Decision-Making Council. So this also includes how district staff in schools can more fully utilize the Kentucky Family and School Guide, the self-assessment, the certificate process, that certification process, and support and training in those strategies to help with family partnerships so that we do have those improved relationships and we have a way to measure that with some communication metrics. And then still continuing on with 4, the Family Partnership Council will support the understanding of how the Kentucky Family and School Guide and resources are being utilized and sharing of best strategies, and just oversee some recommendations for improving those materials. And then the last bullet here is full service community school manager can support ongoing training for our FRISC coordinators, our engagement coordinators, on effective family partnerships and improved relationships and building. So I want to just go back and touch a little bit on that previous bullet, and I know it was kind of on that first recommendation. One of the things that, just so you'll know, some of these things are already in process, have already been done. One of the things, like, how do we share success stories for the schools and the districts, especially that are involved in our Kentucky Community School Initiative? And you can see those schools and districts that are part of that initiative. They're actually on the webpage for full service community schools on KDE. At those best stories, how do you share those successes? And so part of the work that I've been engaged in recently, and Laura's been part of those conversations as well, is how do we set up a story card for those districts and schools to really tell their story of how they're improving outcomes for students with using the community members, with having family engagement pieces, and what does that look like? We've seen some really big success stories already coming out of Paducah. Owensboro. And so, forgive me for that, out of Owensboro. And so how do we tell that story, and how do we have all of our 40 schools that are part of that initiative, how do we frame that so that they can tell their story of success? And how do we collect and gather all of those very, very effective strategies that have produced some of those things? One thing I will say, and I'm going to see Laura nod, we do talk about community schools as when you've seen one, you've only seen one. Someone earlier mentioned, like, every community is so unique, like your absenteeism, you really have to get to the root cause of what is going on in that community or with that particular school community to kind of help design some interventions that help meet that need and get those students in school. And so it's all based down to looking at your data, really knowing your families, and really having a place for their voice to come forward and help solve those problems together. So those are the recommendations that came from that final report. And I just wanted to walk you through them. As I said, the whole report was emailed to you in its entirety if you want to go back and read that. Does anyone, that was a lot in a little bit of time, I do know. Does anyone have any discussion or questions about the report or about what I've just presented?
Marcia, if I could just add,
Sure.
I know we talk a lot about the current initiative with community schools, but just to reiterate, like the story cards and the good work that's happening in family engagement shouldn't be limited to just the 40 schools. So, if you're looking at that list and you're thinking that you don't see your school or you don't see your district, the community schools 4-pillar work is work that any school can do, regardless if they're in the current grant cycle or not. And the family and community engagement pillar work really supports what we're doing here in this council. So just wanted to make that connect if you're thinking, well, my school's not a part of this, that as you're reading about the initiative, think of how that applies to your school as well.
And Laura, thank you so much for making that very clear. I hope I didn't muddy that up earlier, but it is a great way. When you think about the one-stop shop too, the how do we tell the story of every successful story and not just those that are in that initiative that we're engaged in. Anyone else? Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'm seeing 2:59. And I want to thank all of you so much for being attentive and being present. I know I said it earlier, but it's been a very productive meeting. I think it's been helpful. say that our next meeting is, I think I have it on the slide, it's June 18th, 2024, and that's the next time that we all come together. And if there's no further discussion or further questions, I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
All in favor? So much. You know how to find us now, and I do look forward to working with all of you. Have a wonderful afternoon.